The banner said it all. The Beatles and the Rolling Stones, a historic concert. Two bands who'd never shared a stage. Two groups the media had spent years pitting against each other. Two legends the world had been told were rivals, enemies, competitors fighting for the crown of rock and roll. And tonight, they were performing together. But something happened on that stage. Something nobody expected. Something that would shatter the rivalry narrative forever. Something that would prove the media had been lying all along. What happened in the next 2 hours didn't just shock the 70,000 people in that stadium. It shocked the world and changed how an entire generation understood competition, friendship, and what it really means to be legendary. But before we get to that moment, the moment that made grown men cry and proved everything we thought we knew was wrong, you need to understand how this concert came to be. Because this wasn't planned, wasn't scheduled, wasn't supposed to happen at all. It started with a phone call. Paul McCartney calling Mick Jagger. Not for business, not for publicity, just two friends who were tired. Tired of the rivalry narrative. Tired of being told they hated each other. Tired of a story that had never been true. "The media's been lying about us for years," Paul said, "making people think we're enemies, making fans choose sides, making everything a competition. And I'm done with it. What if we just showed them we're friends, always have been, always will be?" Mick was quiet for a moment. Then, a concert, Beatles and Stones, together, not competing, collaborating. Exactly. The media will lose their minds. Good, let them. People need to see the truth. They planned it in secret, told no one except the bands, found a stadium, set a date, then announced it. 2 weeks before the show, the world erupted. Beatles and Stones performing together? This is either the greatest thing ever or the biggest disaster in music history. Critics predicted catastrophe. Two egos that big on one stage? It'll be a train wreck, a competition to see who can outperform the other, a public display of everything wrong with rock and roll. Fans were divided. Beatles fans worried their idols would be shown up. Stones fans feared the same. Everyone expected tension, drama, proof that the rivalry was real. Nobody expected what actually happened. The night of the concert, 70,000 people packed the stadium. The energy was electric, but also nervous, like everyone was waiting for something to go wrong, waiting for the competition to start, waiting for the rivalry to finally explode into the open. The Beatles took the stage first, performed 5 songs. The crowd went wild. Perfect performance, classic Beatles, everything you'd expect and more. Then the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger prowling the stage, that signature energy, that raw power. 5 more songs, the crowd equally wild. Perfect performance, classic Stones, everything you'd expect and more. And then came the moment nobody saw coming. Both bands came on stage together. All 4 Beatles, all 5 Stones. 9 legends standing there, instruments ready, crowd on their feet, cameras flashing, everyone waiting for the competition, waiting for one band to try to outdo the other, waiting for proof that the rivalry was real. Instead, something else happened. Mick walked over to Paul, in front of 70,000 people, in front of millions watching on TV, and he did something simple, something that shouldn't have been shocking, but was. He hugged him. Not a quick hug, not a publicity hug, a real, long, genuine embrace between friends, between brothers, between two people who'd been told they were supposed to hate each other, but never had. The stadium went silent, completely, utterly silent. Because in that moment, in that hug, the rivalry died. The narrative shattered. The lie everyone had been told, that Beatles and Stones were enemies, dissolved. And what replaced it was truth. Simple, beautiful truth. They were friends, always had been, and they were about to prove it. What they did next changed everything. They didn't compete, they collaborated. Not each band taking turns trying to outshine the other. Both bands playing together, supporting each other, making each other better. Paul and Mick sharing vocals. John and Keith trading guitar lines. George and Brian creating harmonies nobody had heard before. Ringo and Charlie creating rhythms that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. It wasn't Beatles music, wasn't Stones music, was something new, something better. Something that could only exist when two great things came together instead of competing. The crowd was crying, not from sadness, from witnessing something they'd never seen, never imagined, never thought possible. Collaboration at the highest level, friendship destroying rivalry, truth defeating lies. But the most powerful moment came near the end. Mick stopped the music, walked to the microphone, voice serious. "The media's been telling you a story for years," he said, "that we hate the Beatles, that we're competing, that there's a rivalry, that you have to choose, Beatles or Stones. Can't like both, can't support both, have to pick a side." The stadium was silent, listening, waiting. "That story is a lie," Mick said. "We've never been rivals. We've always been friends. We've supported each other, learned from each other, made each other better. The only people who wanted a rivalry were people who make money from conflict, from division, from making you choose." Paul walked over, took the microphone. "You know what the truth is? The Beatles exist because the Stones pushed us, made us better, made us work harder, made us reach higher, and they'll tell you the same thing. We made each other legendary, not by competing, by inspiring." John stepped forward. "There's room for everyone, room for Beatles, room for Stones, room for every artist who creates from truth. The only people who need you to choose are people who don't understand that music isn't a competition. It's a collaboration. Between artists, between fans, between humans trying to make the world a little bit better." The crowd erupted. Not just applause, understanding, recognition, relief. Because they'd been forced to choose for so long, told they couldn't love both, couldn't appreciate different styles, couldn't celebrate multiple legends. And now the legends themselves were saying, "You don't have to choose. You never did. That was always a lie." What happened after that concert rippled through music forever. Other artists started collaborating. Artists the media had called rivals started performing together. The narrative of competition started dying, replaced by collaboration, by support, by the understanding that making each other better matters more than being better than each other. A famous music critic who'd spent years writing about the Beatles-Stones rivalry wrote a public apology. "I was wrong," he wrote. "I created conflict where there was friendship. I forced fans to choose when they wanted to celebrate. I made money from division. I'm sorry. I'm done with rivalry narratives. I'm done pitting artists against each other. From now on, I celebrate collaboration, support, friendship, the truth." Other critics followed, slowly, but they followed. The rivalry narrative that had dominated music journalism for decades started dying, replaced by something healthier, something truer, something better. Fans changed too. Beatles fans started openly loving Stones music. Stones fans started celebrating Beatles albums. The tribalism dissolved, replaced by appreciation, by joy, by the freedom to love both, to love all, to celebrate everything without feeling like you had to choose. But perhaps the most beautiful impact was personal. Between Paul and Mick, between John and Keith, between all of them. They'd been friends before, but quietly, privately, afraid to show it publicly because the rivalry narrative was too strong, too profitable for too many people, too expected by too many fans. After that concert, they stopped hiding, started collaborating openly, started supporting each other publicly, started being the friends they'd always been. But now, without shame, without hiding, without pretending. Paul was asked years later about that concert, about that moment, about the hug that shocked the world. That hug wasn't just between me and Mick, Paul said. It was a message. To every artist told they have to compete, to every fan told they have to choose, to everyone who's been lied to about rivalry. The message was simple. Friendship is stronger than competition. Collaboration is more powerful than rivalry. And you never, ever have to choose between loving two great things. Mick said something similar. People want stories, simple stories, good versus evil, Beatles versus Stones, us versus them. But life isn't that simple. The truth is, we've always been on the same side, the side of making great music, of helping people, of creating beauty. The rivalry was fiction, the friendship was fact. That concert just made the fact visible. Keith Richards, who'd been mostly quiet that night, spoke about it decades later. You know what I remember most? Not the music, not the crowd. The look on people's faces when they realized they'd been lied to. When they understood that the rivalry had been manufactured, that we'd always been friends. That relief in their eyes, that freedom, that's what mattered. Not the performance, the permission we gave people to stop choosing, to start celebrating. The concert was never officially released. No album, no recording, just memories. Just the 70,000 people who were there and the millions who wish they had been. Everyone who was there agrees on one thing. It changed them. Changed how they saw music, saw competition, saw friendship. A woman who attended wrote about it 50 years later. I went to that concert a Beatles fan, devoted, convinced I had to choose. I left a music fan, free to love both. That concert gave me freedom from tribalism. Before the concert, both bands were nervous, not about performing, about breaking the narrative. What if people don't believe us? John asked backstage. What if they think this is just a publicity stunt? Mick put his hand on John's shoulder. Then we keep showing them, until the truth is louder than the lie. That's when they made a pact, all 9 of them. They would never speak negatively about each other, never feed the rivalry narrative. They would actively support each other, make the friendship visible. And they kept that pact for decades. When John was killed in 1980, Mick was one of the first to call Paul, not for the media, for friendship, for grief. We lost one of the best, Mick said through tears, not just as a musician, as a friend. Paul never forgot that call, that in his darkest moment, the person the media called his rival was actually his comfort. The concert changed how young musicians approach their craft. A young guitarist who attended went on to become famous himself. I was 17, expected a battle. Instead, I saw collaboration, saw friendship. It changed how I approach music forever. I stopped seeing other musicians as competition, started seeing them as collaborators who could make me better. That philosophy spread, generation after generation, growing up knowing the Beatles-Stones rivalry had been a lie. Knowing collaboration mattered more than competition. Record labels noticed. For years, they'd profited from rivalry. After that concert, it became harder. Artists started refusing to participate in rivalry narratives. One label executive spoke honestly years later. That concert cost us millions. We'd built a business model on conflict. In one night, they destroyed it. We had to change our entire approach. The concert changed sports, politics, business, any field where rivalry had been manufactured. People started questioning, are these really rivals? Or are we being told they're rivals so someone can profit from our division? Paul was asked in 2020, 50 years after the concert, what he was most proud of in his career. Not Sgt. Pepper, not Let It Be, not any album. That concert, Paul said, the night we destroyed the rivalry narrative, the night we showed people they don't have to choose, that's what I'm most proud of. Not the music, the freedom we gave people. Mick said something similar. We changed music that night, not by performing, by being honest, by destroying the lie. So here's the truth. The Beatles and Rolling Stones were never rivals. That was fiction, created by people who profited from division. The truth was friendship, collaboration, support, love. And that truth freed millions, freed them to love both, to celebrate all, to stop choosing and start appreciating. That's the legacy. Not great music, though it was. The legacy is freedom. Freedom from forced choice. Freedom to celebrate multiple great things without guilt. Whatever you've been told you have to choose between, ask yourself, is this choice real or manufactured? Am I choosing because it matters or because someone profits from my division? The Beatles and Rolling Stones taught us that collaboration beats competition, that there's room for everyone. You don't have to choose. You never did. That was always a lie. If this touched you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs permission to stop choosing. Drop a comment. Have you been freed from forced choice? Will you let this free you too?